Jamie Foxx's life is not just the story of a man who became famous. It is the story of a child who was abandoned, a boy who was forced to grow up too fast, and a human being who learned very early that survival itself is a form of art because Jamie Foxx, born Eric Marlon Bishop in Terrell, Texas, entered this world surrounded by silence rather than celebration. Adopted at just 7 months old by his grandparents after his biological parents stepped away, growing up in a strict household, where love was present but comfort was limited, where discipline was heavy and expectations were higher than most children could handle. Yet inside that quiet home lived a restless spirit, a mind that refused to stay small, a soul that demanded expression. And even as a child, Jamie learned that laughter was not just entertainment, it was armor, it was protection, it was a way to survive emotional loneliness without letting the world see the cracks. Because when you grow up knowing that the people who brought you into this world chose not to stay, you either break or you build something unbreakable, and Jamie chose to build. Slowly, painfully, quietly, discovering music at the age of 5 when he touched a piano and realized that sound could speak when words failed, that rhythm could hold. Emotions he didn't know how to explain, practicing relentlessly, becoming a classically trained pianist, singing in the church, performing gospel music while still carrying questions about identity, belonging, and purpose. And while many kids around him dreamed small, because that's what the environment allowed, Jamie dreamed big without knowing how big life would demand him to become, excelling academically, playing football as a quarterback, standing out not just because of talent but because of confidence. Because humor followed him everywhere like a shadow, and by the time he reached college, attending United States International University on a scholarship for classical music and composition, it became clear that this was not a man meant for one lane because Jamie Foxx was a combination of things the world usually tries to separate. Funny yet serious, musical yet intellectual, disciplined yet wildly creative. And when he stepped into comedy clubs in the late 1980s, he did not arrive polished or protected, he arrived hungry. Performing stand-up in rooms where rejection was common and respect was rare, choosing the stage name Jamie Foxx because female comedians were often called first during open mics and he needed every chance he could get, a decision that shows early on how strategic survival shaped his success, because nothing about his rise was accidental, every move was calculated. Through struggle. And when he landed on the sketch comedy show in living color, he didn't just perform, he dominated, creating characters that felt alive, exaggerated yet truthful, funny yet deeply human, proving that he was not a temporary talent but a force. And still, success did not arrive wrapped in comfort, because Hollywood loves to typecast, loves to limit, loves to decide how far someone is allowed to go. And Jamie Foxx refused to be boxed, pushing against expectations, fighting for roles that allowed him to show depth, pain, vulnerability, intelligence, and range, leading to performances that shocked audiences who only knew him as a comedian. And when he portrayed Ray Charles in Ray, he didn't just act, he disappeared, losing himself inside the soul of another man, mastering the piano parts, capturing the blindness, the addiction, the genius, the contradictions, and in doing so, he forced the world to see him differently, earning an Academy Award not just as recognition but as validation for every moment he was underestimated, every time someone laughed at him when he wanted to be taken seriously, every time the industry tried to decide his ceiling. And yet, even at the peak of his career, Jamie Foxx never pretended the journey was easy, openly speaking about fear, pressure, responsibility, and the weight of expectations, because success does not erase insecurity, it simply changes its shape. And what makes Jamie Foxx inspiring is not just his talent, but his resilience, his willingness to fail publicly, to reinvent himself repeatedly, to move between comedy, drama, music, hosting, producing, and activism without losing his core, reminding the world that greatness is not about staying comfortable. It is about staying honest, staying hungry, staying curious, and staying willing to evolve even when evolution hurts, because Jamie Foxx is living proof that your beginning does not define your ending, that being abandoned does not mean you are unwanted by destiny. That pain can become fuel if you refuse to let it turn into bitterness. and that the world will eventually make space for you when you stop asking for permission and start demanding growth through action, discipline, and relentless self-belief. And this is only the beginning of his story, because the man the world applauds today was built by years the world never saw, years of silence, sacrifice, and self-doubt turned into unstoppable momentum. As Jamie Foxx moved deeper into the spotlight, fame began to test him in ways talent never could. Because when the world finally opens its doors to you, it also begins to watch, judge, criticize, and demand perfection. And Jamie quickly learned that success is louder than failure, but far lonelier, carrying expectations that never sleep. And yet, instead of allowing Hollywood to define his identity, he chose to expand it, stepping into music with the same seriousness he brought to acting, releasing albums that blended R&B, soul, and vulnerability, collaborating with legends, winning Grammys, and proving once again that he was not a phase, not a trend, not a lucky break, but a disciplined artist who refused to let others decide his limits, because many people can reach success once, but very few can rebuild it again and again across different industries. And what makes Jamie Foxx different is his obsession with mastery. His refusal to rely on charisma alone, practicing endlessly behind closed doors, sharpening his voice, refining his performances, studying the greats, and staying humble enough to learn even while standing at the top and yet beneath the awards, the applause, the red carpets, and the global recognition. There was still a man navigating personal battles, pressure, and the responsibility of being a role model for millions who saw their own struggles reflected in his journey, openly speaking about fear, about the mental weight of always having to prove yourself, especially as a black artist in an industry that often celebrates you loudly one moment and replaces you quietly the next. And still, Jamie never allowed bitterness to harden him, choosing laughter over resentment, gratitude over ego, and evolution over stagnation, taking risks on projects others questioned, hosting shows, producing stories, mentoring younger talent, and investing in voices that had not yet been heard, because he understood that true success is not measured by how high you climb alone, but by how many people you lift as you rise. And when life tested him again through health struggles that forced him into silence and recovery, he faced it with the same strength that shaped his entire life, reminding the world that resilience is not about pretending you're strong. It's about standing back up when strength temporarily leaves you, sharing gratitude for survival rather than anger for vulnerability, and inspiring millions simply by choosing transparency over pride. Because the most powerful thing about Jamie Foxx is not his fame, his money, or his awards, but his ability to remain human in a world that tries to turn people into brands, his willingness to speak about pain without letting it define him, his refusal to let setbacks erase momentum, and his understanding that greatness is a lifelong commitment, not a single moment of applause. And today, when you look at Jamie Foxx, you are not just looking at a successful actor or musician. You are looking at a man who transformed abandonment into ambition, discipline into dominance, humor into healing, and pain into purpose, a reminder that no matter where you start, no matter how many times life knocks you down, your story is still being written as long as you have the courage to keep showing up, keep evolving, and keep believing that your best chapter is never behind you. It is always ahead, waiting for the version of you brave enough to grow into it. As the years passed and the noise around Jamie Foxx grew louder, something remarkable happened inside him, something that separates temporary stars from lasting legends. Because instead of chasing relevance, he began chasing meaning, understanding that fame fades faster than purpose, and this shift allowed him to operate from a place of clarity rather than fear, choosing projects that challenged him emotionally rather than simply rewarding him financially, embracing roles that demanded vulnerability, depth, and honesty, even when they carried risk, because Jamie had already learned one of life's hardest truths early on, that comfort is often the enemy of growth, and this awareness kept him sharp while others grew complacent. And while the world admired his versatility, very few understood the internal discipline required to maintain it. The daily commitment to excellence, the constant self-checking to avoid ego, the humility to stay grounded despite global recognition. Because when you've lived through abandonment, rejection, and self-doubt, you develop an internal compass that money cannot buy, and Jamie Foxx carried that compass into every phase of his career. Whether standing on a comedy stage making thousands laugh, sitting behind a piano pouring his soul into melodies, or disappearing into characters that reflected humanity's flaws, contradictions, and resilience,